Welcome. We're going to talk about Ultrabook. It's a new category device that we announced back in Computex in June this year. My name is Raman. I'm with PCCG, which is Personal Computer Client Group at Intel. So what I'm going to cover today is essentially just a quick reminder or background on where the PC is today. Give a vision of what the Ultrabook is, right? What we're doing in the roadmap, and then in terms of how it's going to transition from sort of notebooks to this new category, and then what are we really doing in the ecosystem space. So just look at what the landscape looks like today, right? It's obviously continuing to evolve, right? To actually look at a quick some really astronomical numbers here, right? 2+ billion internet users, right? 250 billion emails every day, right? 2.5 billion images on Facebook that's uploaded per month, and 2 billion videos, right? So obviously, on one side, it's the data, it's the server side, which is handling all the data, but what is really generating all of the data, right? One is the consumer. Consumer is really becoming very big. The other thing is the number of devices, right? You have smartphones, tablets. Of course, PC's been there for a while, so the number of devices just exploded right now, right? So significant growth over there. There's a lot of opportunities, right? So if you actually look at recently, I think the tablets has been in the media a lot, quite a bit. We hear a lot of forecasters, third-party forecasters like Gartner, IDC, calling for revisions on. They're revising down the PC forecast, right? So the question is, are we in the post-PC era, right? And that's a question that's been asked many times before we've looked at it, right? So let's look at it again, right? Given what's happening in the industry. So if you actually look at this is actually a volume growth curve for the PCs. This is actually inclusive of desktop and mobile laptops, right? If you look at it in the last 10 years, the number of PCs has actually doubled, significant. We're doing around 130 million units back in 2000. Today we're close to 360, 370 million units, so pretty significant, right? And it's been a continuous growth, right? We actually look at, back in 95 was the Pentium MMX, where we moved the PC into the consumer space. But in 2003, it was big Centrino, where the laptop really took off, right? Actually, one of the things that's interesting thing about this curve here, if you look at 2000 to 2002, flat, and we had the tech bubble burst, there was a recession back then. But look at 2008 to 2010, it continues to grow, right? Something fundamentally is different there, and that actually is emerging markets, which is actually really driving a lot of growth today, right? And if you actually look at our ecosystem today, actually we ship about approximately a million PCs a day, right? 360, 370 million units PCs. On yearly volume, TAM, total available market, consumption basis, we're shipping about, on average 1 million PCs a day, right? Compare that to tablets, even the most optimistic forecast for 2011 is 70 million units. So pretty significant. So the PC install base, the PC growth is sort of pretty significant, right? Comparison. Okay, so the other data, I think that based on the emerging market comment that I made earlier, the other data that actually gets sort of overlooked is if you look at the overall worldwide population, right? There are only about 1 to 1.5 billion people that actually own a PC today. That's the install base. Right? There is a significant pie, which is 2.2 billion people that actually can afford a PC, but actually don't own it. Right? And of course, there's a very significant chunk where a lot of people cannot afford a PC, right? And hopefully, as the economic development, as income levels go up, the affordability goes up, right? But the thing that we need to keep in mind is the green portion of the whole pie chart is much smaller than your blue, right? Which is so there's a significant growth opportunity in PC that sort of being overlooked, especially coming from the emerging markets. Right, so if you look at this is actually sort of a curve of PC penetration by its dependency on the income levels, right? So the x-axis is your weeks of income to purchase an average price notebook PC, and the y-axis shows the penetration rate. So obviously, if you look at the tipping point at which the curve just shoots up, right? And if you look at where the high penetration rates are, they're all actually in mature markets. Right? And if you see why this is happening, one of the reasons is because of their income levels much higher. Right? So, and where if you look at sort of on the flatter portion of the curve, it's really the emerging markets, right? India, Middle East, China, Brazil. Right? And this is 2010 actuals. Right? Let's look at what's happening in the emerging markets. The emerging markets are actually, if you look at Eastern Europe and Brazil, definitely penetrations are going up, right? Because the income levels, you know, it's a strong factor. Income levels are actually going up there, right? And then China definitely. And if you actually look at, recently there was news that China took over US as the highest PC consumption market. And number 3 market is Brazil. So 2 out of the top 3 PC consumption markets are emerging markets. So pretty significant growth opportunities. Part of it is population, part of it is, you know, a lot of opportunity in terms of people, you know, people that really go buy, right? So if you look at also the, based on the survey, if you look at some of the use cases in terms of what people prefer, these are not percentages, these are just some indices based on a particular survey. If you actually look at the blue, the light blue, tends to be pretty significant number of users tend to actually prefer PCs over other devices for a lot of use cases, right? Even if the consumption usages, right? Like reading email or browsing internet, right? So it may be that the trends could be changing a little bit, right? Based on as more and more new devices get in the market. But at least if you look at the preference, you know, I think the traditional keyboard-based PCs are still pretty strong among users in terms of the needs, in terms of where they think, in terms of the usability. So if the PCs is, you know, if you say the PCs are still promising, then why are we really talking about the change, especially with Ultrabook, right? So I think, so we've seen 2 changes before. One is with the MMX came back in '95, then with Centrino, and so I think we think that the reason why change is sort of viewed, especially in the notebook market. One is with the devices like tablets and smartphones, right? The end user expectations are definitely rising, right? They want better looking devices now, right? Not the clunky laptops anymore, right? Definitely longer battery life, which tablets and smartphones are setting the benchmark over there. There's obviously the instant on feature that tablets and smartphones provide that PCs doesn't provide. I mean, you can put PC in your standby mode, but you're going to lose your battery pretty fast. Right? Then there's always connected, which is basically emails, your social networks, everything's always updated. That's something that's actually starting to get very standard, right? And I think people will want that in PCs too. And then touch is actually becoming commonplace. In terms of, so that's one thing, that's actually a pretty important thing we have to take into consideration going forward when it comes to PCs. The other thing is the end user requirements are diverging, right? So if you look at where smartphones a couple of years ago versus today, significant performance boost of the smartphone, same with the tablets, right? So people want a lot of the features packed into one device, right? And also at a minimum, reasonable cost, right? So definitely, I think how do we have devices that can actually then satisfy the needs, a broad spectrum of needs for users? And then one thing that's actually becoming very important is the software ecosystem. Right? Software is getting so visible now, right? In applications that the App Store popularity, whether it's Android or it's, the Apple App Store, right? Then of course Windows 8 coming next year with their App Store, and also with touch and everything. I think that's getting extremely important. So I think these are things that we actually have to take a note in the PC side, right? And meet customers' needs. Right. So I think that sets the stage for what you think about Ultrabook. Right. So if you look at Ultrabook, vision in terms of whether it's business or consumer, right? It's a personal device, right? So it's an expression of me. It's something that that I can sort of show off. after looking at all this stuff, I sometimes hesitate to take I have a ThinkPad, and I know it's pretty big, whether it's an airport or a flight, it's not looking cool anymore, right? Because it's a MacBook Air, things like that. I like the way it looks. Obviously, if you look at these smartphones and tablets, they're pretty cool looking devices. Then I talk about the instant on demand that consumers see, right? They want to actually get on the device immediately. They don't want to wait for the boot time, 30 seconds, whatever, however long it takes. Then maybe at some point we'll have sensors in there where it recognizes the gestures, right? Whether it's hand waving or something like that. Connecting us on Facebook or other social network quickly. So it's not just turning on the computer quickly on my device, but it's also getting on the internet quickly. And then the next thing is what we call compute continuum, where multiple devices. We have multiple devices today, right? And they don't necessarily sync well. How do we have this continuum where each of my devices recognize the other, and so I'm seamlessly working. And obviously security is pretty important. So I can have all the data, because if it's a personal device, I'm going to be using it all the time, then it's got to be secure, right? And then of course it never keeps you waiting, which is basically boot time, quick boot time. Right? And so what are the things in terms of the features? If you look at the vision, what are the things we can then that we need to have in a PC? So it needs to be a full PC. It can be. If you look at iPad today, for example, it's a great consumption device, but when it comes to productivity applications, you would rather have a PC, right? So definitely from a full PC standpoint, when instant on, AOAC is always on, always connected, always updated. Microsoft calls it always fresh, right? You want to be high performance, delivered by CPU, great visual media experience, right? Great battery life. And to follow our battery life, today we don't have it, but it's a vision, right? We want to get there. Multi-week standby, great design, ability to have full keyboard, so you're not compromising on your productivity. And today's PCs don't have a lot of sensors. I mean, they don't even have any sensors. So at some point in the future, have sensors, right? And then the ability to sort of go across multiple devices. And if you look at some of the graphics here on the side, so Ultrabook is not just a PC that's thin. It's also, it could be a convertible form factor that becomes your tablet when you really want it, and it's a PC when you really need it. So it's got a keyboard, then it's got either a slider or some kind of hinge that slaps on your keyboard and becomes a tablet. Right, so this is a graphical representation of where we think we would move the industry, or where the industry would move, right, from a PC standpoint. So it doesn't, the picture alone doesn't do full justice because it's, it shows a sleek design there, but it's really more than a sleek design. It's, all the things I talked about, responsiveness, security, are very important in software experience, the available applications, so really transforms the user experience. So why do we think it's, why do we think it's important? And I think, and what do we think about this, right? So as I said earlier, we've done this in the past. We've seen these transitions. First time was back in '95 when we moved, when the industry moved moved computers from business to consumer with the 10K MMX technology, right? And then in 2003 was the Centrino mobile technology where we sort of took the wires of the computer. It became more mobile. And in 2012 plus, it's really Ultrabook. The Ultrabook is already available today, or rather it will be available in the second half. In the holiday season, we demoed a few Ultrabooks from a few vendors, OEMs, back in IDF 2 weeks ago. So expect quite a few OEMs selling their Ultrabooks in holiday. Right? But 2012 is when a vision starts really, starts to ramp in terms of all the features. Right, so if you look at some of the key pillars in Ultrabook that we are focusing on, performance is one, which is really your CPU and your processor graphics. Responsiveness, we talked about how responsive your system is, and then security is very important, getting very important, and then of course the battery life, right? So the key pillars. So let's look at performance real quick. So if you look at the CPU, if you look at the graphs, it's a representation of where the performance is. So the install base typically, if you look at their PC refresh rates, it's about every 3 or 4 years. So the install base would be anything that's before 2011, so from 2007 to 20, up until 2011, right? And those are based on your Core 2 and some of the older core processors. So if you look at the standard TDP, as we call it, has been 35 watts. And if you look at it, it's got a certain performance. 2011 was when we introduced a second-gen core called Sandy Bridge. And if you look at that performance on the 35-watt thermal envelope, significant performance boost. Right? And Ultrabook will actually have processors called Ultrabook, or it used to be formerly called ultra-low voltage processors. And they're actually based on 17-watt TDPs. And so that provides for better battery life and so on. If you look at the performance, even with the lower thermal envelope, they actually are performing pretty well. Right? Maybe not quite as much as 35 watt, they're much better than your install base, maybe slightly lower than your traditional laptops, so as we go on. So it'll only get better with time. Right? So definitely I think the Ultrabook will be powered by pretty powerful processors out there. And at the same time, not consuming much power, so thereby providing better battery life. The next is media, and so we have, with Sandy Bridge, we have now the processor graphics that actually delivers really great, it's media graphics, right? On the media, we have usually some really cool features, things like Intel wireless display. Today a lot of smart TVs that come with wireless integrated into them, and if you have a second-gen core at a minimum, you're able to actually use this wide-eye technology. And of course, if you have all the TVs, LCDs, then you can buy adapters from Logitech or Netgear and so on. And it's a great technology. I think we had a demonstration IDF and people loved it. The other thing is QuickSync Video, which actually came with our second-gen core, which actually does quick transcoding of various video formats. Then Intel inside has the premium, secure way of getting premium content. So a lot of media features out there that actually is part of the platform. And the graphics, I mentioned the processor graphics with Sandy Bridge is great performance. Two-core processor graphics. A lot of mainstream and high-end gaming is possible. So that's sort of the traditional performance pillar. And then if you actually look in the responsive space, starting this year, we actually have 3 different technologies that some of these Ultrabooks will have. One is smart response technology. That is essentially improving the responsiveness of the system when it's in use. And the other advantage is that if you actually use a hard drive with cache or SSD, or actually hard drive with cache, minimal cache, then you can actually get SSD-like performance. At the same time, you can get the capacity of a hard drive. Right? So that means you can get, from a price standpoint, it's cheaper, you have cache hard drive, but you can actually get the performance of SSD. The other one is called Intel Smart Connect, which is basically a version of our always connected feature. So it essentially updates your email and social network sites even when you're on standby or sleep mode. And then finally, the rapid start technology, which basically allows your computer to boot up pretty fast. And actually less than 7 seconds from hibernate mode. So that means you're actually getting the advantage of your power advantage of your hibernate mode and the startup advantage of your standby mode. In terms of security, the Ultrabooks, at least for 2012, namely, will actually have a couple of technologies with identity protection technology and anti-theft. And they actually will be enabled in the Ultrabooks next year. This year they actually are enabled, but you may not have all the systems need not actually have it. But next year, all the systems will have an out-of-box experience for these technologies. So it just depends on the consumer to go and opt in for the services. So essentially, identity protection, what it does is it ensures that you have a secure transaction on the internet. Certain websites are being enabled where it recognizes that your computer, your Ultrabook actually has an IPT, and it asks the consumer, do you want to use that IPT, and allows for the secure transaction to happen. And anti-theft is where, if your PC is lost, you can ensure that the data is not recoverable by someone else, basically. And finally, on the battery life, if you look at the scale of the thermal envelope for the processors today, on the low end you have the ATOM, the SoC, right? So anywhere from less than 1 watt to 10 watts, and then on the top, I talked about 35 watt, you have the current notebook design target, right? So where we're moving the Ultrabook is actually more on the sweet spot in the center, is the 15 to 17 watt. And actually the Atom was probably scaled in the bottom, but the Atom itself will not be part of the Ultrabook. So in terms of how we think it will transition, the transition is already starting to happen, as I told you earlier. The idea we already showed 4 OEMs. We had an Acer, we had a Toshiba, we had a Lenovo U300S, and we had a ASUS UX21, 2 different screen sizes that were already shown, and they're all shipping pretty soon. We'll have more coming out later in the year, and then you'll see more in CES 12 January. So in 2011, it's really, so we talked about entering the market, but you can see already, since the announcement that was made in June, Computex, we already have so many OEMs on board, and so many systems already coming out. In 2012 is when we really start to have a lot of the features in sort of full bloom, right? If you will, ultra thin, ultra responsive, and ultra secure. And then in 2013, Haswell, or its Shark-New platform, will actually, it's completely re-architect in order to support the Ultrabook RAM. So essentially, that's when we'll really see some of the real benefits, even from the processor side. Significant effort going on there, and so that's really how the transition is going to happen. And yeah, these are some of the, on top of all the things I talked about, right? Battery life, responsiveness, security, and performance. These are all the other things that you'll see, things like turbo technology, which we don't talk about. It's part of your Sandy Bridge 2nd Gen core. The Thunderbolt USB 3 that's being supported. The Thunderbolt is already available. USB 3 will become integrated in the next chipset that's coming out early next year. And then, with Win8, touch is probably going to become pretty important by default in the PC space. And then things like NFCs and some sensor based, I think those will become pretty important in the PC space beyond 2012 and beyond. All right, so what are we doing with respect to the ecosystem enabling? Right, so it's pretty important. Multiple different things. So those are more at a hardware level, so multiple different things, right? So definitely touch is pretty important. And touch along with Intel. Win8 having great touch experience, I think starts to get very important. And obviously, you need also a lot of innovation going here because of the Z-height requirements in Ultrabook. It's got to be thin. So a lot of work that needs to go in there at the industry level. Battery definitely important. We talk about good battery life. 10, 12 hours long term. So lithium polymer batteries. It's got to be lighter. It's got to fit into the certain Z height, thickness dimensions. Storage is pretty important, right? I think mostly it'll be hard drive cache hard drive, or SSD for better responsiveness, right? Then the chassis itself, right? It's pretty important. Rigid thin wall chassis, obviously, as it gets thinner, it's got to be rigid, it's got to be reliable, so it's pretty important. So a lot of work there. The keyboards, you can't compromise on the keyboard. You still need that full throw keyboard experience. That's important. And then sensors are slowly starting to integrate. But a lot of those actually require a lot of innovation for the PC space. A lot of cost. You've got to drive the cost down in order for the volumes to go up. That's important, right? So a lot of enabling activity that needs to be involved. If you actually look at the targets where we have, then those are targets we actually defined for an Ultrabook. Right? For example, the battery life has to be greater than 5 hours for more. There's a certain benchmark called Mobile Mark or 7 that we are using. Right? So we recommend greater than 8 hours. And Windows 8 and Haswell 2013, those numbers start going up. Benchmarks may change, but we definitely want to push the higher and higher battery life. Responsiveness, the one we have for 2011 is actually, S4 is actually Hibernate. So from Hibernate to keyboard comes up in 7 seconds. Right? So pretty aggressive goal, and as I told you, the Ultrabook in 2011 is already meeting these goals. Z-height requirements, we had two Z-height requirements in 2011 and 2012. They're on this screen sizes that is greater than or equal to 14 inches screen size, that is any of it less than 21 millimeters. And for less than 14 inches, it's going to be less than equal to 18 millimeters. A lot of very thin systems out there. And then, if you have convertible design, like a slate that actually becomes a tablet, by turning your panel and putting it down on a keyboard, you have additional allowance on that. And in terms of sensors, right now we're recommending some of these sensors. We don't expect that all systems will have it, but some of the high-end systems probably initially, and then as the cost of some of these components and the integration costs go down, then hopefully they'll start becoming a standard feature. So these are all still pretty hardware focused. And you guys as developers probably are pretty interested in some of these components, because some of your apps will probably start using some of these components. And if you actually look at just overall, in terms of all the different players in the industry that we are working with, right? So at the OEM level, the Dells and HPs and so on, ASUS and Acer, so on. Obviously working with them through consulting and support, providing RE resources and things like that. ODMs, the motherboard manufacturers, definitely innovation excellence program, we've seeding, reference design, working with them on those. And then working with a lot of these third-party vendors on thin ingredients, like things like SSDs, sensors, and so on, battery life, panels, right? So and then overall broad is through sort of sharing this definition of vision, right? And then providing the tools. One of the tools probably an example is AppUp, right, for PCs, from a software standpoint. So I think overall it's a big industry-wide effort. Back in August, we had a symposium in Taiwan where we had a lot of industry players come in, and they actually got to see the vision. During that time, we also announced the $300 million fund from the venture arm of the company for Intel Capital, in order to really support the Ultrabook. So it's pretty important for us, right? So this is how I was going into a little bit of specifics of what we're doing, right? So definitely the Ultrabook fund from the Intel Capital is pretty important. Shows a commitment to the segment, and we're very serious about it in bringing about innovation and sort of driving this category pretty hard. Then, in terms of engineering investments, obviously developing engineers, tools, and collateral with partners, OEMs and ODMs, and definitely enabling, over 60 suppliers, and prepare them for the industry shift, right? Because I think we want everybody to take part in this. I think there is an opportunity for everyone, and I think all of us will succeed. And then in terms of what we're doing, we're definitely preparing for this, for the Ultrabook aggressively. The entire industry is definitely focusing on some of these components, and that's the focus is really driven through the spec, the definition. It's very targeted. That way, it's not anything, right? We say what the ZI should be, what the battery life should be, what CPU you need to have in there, and so on. So, security, what responsiveness. So also a lot of measurements. So it's so there's a scientific approach to in terms of how we're driving it. That way, we're able to really articulate a vision, and definitely lead. I think our ecosystem is definitely responding, right? I mean, OEMs are already responding. We have great systems out there instead. Unfortunately, it's not here, but I don't know if any of you were there in IDF. We had a big showcase there. We had a lot of systems and demo. So while this is, I think, there's no specific software component here yet. I think it's a great opportunity for, and that's why I'm here, is that it's a great opportunity for developers, right? to watch out for the space. You know, as more and more systems come on, I think one of the things we really want is key involvement from the software guys to really make this category exciting for consumers. And just like the way with tablets, smartphones have the ability to easily access apps and really do fun things with their with the Ultrabook, given the performance, right? It's got the performance benefit for sure, right? And then with Win 8 next year, we'll only add to that excitement. All right, so to quickly summarize, I think, as I said earlier, I think there's still a lot of growth opportunity in PCs. Right? We showed the data, the significant opportunity, but we have to innovate. We have to keep providing something exciting. Definitely, the user experience for consumers, is very important, primary. Right? And those market trends are definitely calling for a change in the user trends. We can sort of, from the PC side, we can stay behind. We have to keep innovating. I think Ultrabook category, our vision, based on the vision, I think it's going to transform the PC space pretty significantly. It's definitely going to, we're already starting to see, I think up until idea of, it was on paper. When people got to see, I was actually in the demo for the Ultrabook. The excitement was great. It was amazing. People just came and they didn't even care so much about hey, show me what's inside. They just were thrilled to see some of the systems out there, right? Toshiba and Acer and ASUS. It's fantastic. So as we get more and more systems out there, I think people are going to get excited. As they come out of the market, especially in the next couple of months. It'll be. I think it'll provide some proof that there's a lot of opportunity in this category. And definitely from an Intel standpoint, it's a big priority for us. We are definitely investing a lot in the ecosystem. We are a lot of work going on in the space, and so we are very excited. And we're definitely looking for people to take the opportunity, software, hardware guys, to really innovate and make this category successful.